Before we start with the refight of Kolin, I thought I'd touch on an important subject for any wargamer, and that is, what rule set am I going to be using today? I'm going to be using Twilight of the Soldier Kings by Nick Durrell. This is one of my favourite rule sets for fighting out large scale historical actions in the 7 Years' War. In Twilight of the Soldier Kings rules, combat and shooting works differently from most wargames. Instead of rolling to hit or comparing a combat roll, units are forced to take morale checks with certain modifiers. On an 8+, the unit passes and suffers no effect. On a 4 to a 7, the unit takes a single morale failure, basically a hit or a wound. Most infantry are removed on their 3rd morale failure, but on a 3 or less, the unit is removed from the table. This result also affects any generals that are attached, though generals do allow the unit they're attached to have a reroll on the morale check. For this refight, I'm going to slightly adjust from the historical plan and focus the Prussian efforts on the Austrian left, beginning the attack towards the left centre of the Austrian line, with a unit of grenadiers leading the way, and hopefully force the Austrians to reinforce this position, allowing the rest of the Prussian infantry to make some gains on the right. The battle begins with the Prussian infantry attempting to sweep the Austrian Grenzers from their path. This initially goes well for the Prussians, as they do well on their morale checks. It's not long before the Prussian infantry reach the Austrian line. The Prussian grenadiers have a stroke of luck, routing an Austrian brigade in a swift assault. The same cannot be said for the musketeers to their left, who have come under heavy artillery fire and flee the battlefield. Colorado, in command of the Austrian reserve, sends over some of his infantry to plug the gap in the Austrian line. It is around this time that Bevin begins his attack on the Austrian left flank, with Prussian infantry wading through a stream under musket and artillery fire to engage the Austrians. In the centre, Frederick orders forward 4,000 cavalry in an attempt to exploit the gaps in the Austrian line, but these are soon plugged with Austrian reinforcements, and Austrian cavalry counterattack, forcing most of the Prussian horse back behind their infantry, causing confusion and panic across the line. While there isn't much success in the centre, Bevin's results are proving somewhat different. His infantry push their counterparts back and capture 2 batteries of heavy artillery, but are still faced with Austrian horse. Unfortunately, Bevin's cavalry have been ordered to counter the Austrian cavalry charge in the centre of the battlefield, leaving Bevin unable to push his gains on the Austrian left. In an attempt to rally one of his brigades, Colorado rides into the thick of the fighting and is shot through the shoulder, a wound that would prove fatal. This result also affects any generals that are attached, though generals do allow the unit they're attached to have a reroll on the morale check, but Colorado still fails this test and is removed along with his brigade. Colorado's death causes a panic and mayhem along the Austrian line. Another infantry brigade is routed by Prussian cavalry. In a last-ditch attempt to save the Austrian line, Daun launches forward his last remaining cavalry reserve. These fresh soldiers smash into the battered Prussian infantry, running down hundreds of fleeing soldiers. The last Prussian heavy cavalry attempt to stem this charge, but are no match for this fresh Austrian reserve. With this centre destroyed and its right flank held, Frederick is forced to retreat, just like he did historically. But in my Battle of Kolin, the Prussians have actually inflicted more losses on the Austrians than they took themselves. Though arguably not as disastrous as the historical result, this is still a defeat, which has ended the Prussian invincibility.